that we are discussing today, Madam Speaker, we must have an expanded executive where we have the President, Madam Speaker, we have the Deputy President, we have Executive Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, and we have 2 Deputy Prime Ministers, Madam Speaker, and we have leadership that is clear, Madam Speaker. And I don't see the need, Madam Speaker. Why should we appoint a member of parliament, they resign, we go for by-election, the country incurs expenses? Let us allow members of parliament to be appointed to the cabinet. We give them sitting allowances in the cabinet and save salaries, Madam Speaker, so that we can have a country. And therefore, I hope in the 9 bills that we are intending to bring, and one of them being in the Constitution Amendment Bill, this one being Statutory Amendment Bill, and I'm happy the youth leader, Senator Oburu Odinga, looks excited, especially when I mentioned the issue of expanded executive, because we want his brother to continue serving as the Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya going into the future, and they are doing good work with the President, Raila Amolo Odinga. Madam Speaker, secondly, was on the issue of Section 11, the amendment on the Statutory Amendment 2024. When you read the parent act, Madam Speaker, that is Statutory Amendment Act of 2013, it's very clear. Madam Speaker, the delegated committee, I think in the last session, I don't know, Madam Speaker, whether Senator Faki is lucky or he's always lucky. Because in the last session, when the reorganization of committees in 2020, he became the chair of delegated committee. And I think he did a very good work, and I would have expected him to go back. But I think he decided to deal with issues of land in coastal region and the entire country. And I remember at that time, we used to argue on the timeline of delegated. And as they tried as a committee, you find, because under section, I think the closed section 2 of the statutory amendment in the Statutory Instruments Act of 2013, the definition of regulatory making authority, Madam Speaker, has been given an obligation to do their job. But I remember during tenure of Senator Faki as the chair of a delegated committee, some of the regulatory making authority were delaying in doing their job. And in fact, we had to argue on operationalization because, Madam Speaker, after we have passed a bill, the parent ministry is given authority to do regulations. But you find they stole the operationalization of that act of parliament because they do what, Madam Speaker? They are not very keen in bringing, and I'm happy it has been made now mandatory that within 12 months, Madam Speaker, they must give us, Madam Speaker, timeline for regulation. And therefore, Madam Speaker, we must be very keen because you find a law is passed, the Ministry of ICT, in fact, I remember, Madam Speaker, one of the laws, and Senior Senator, Minority Leader, Senator Manzayo, you remember the one on the data protection. It took so long to bring allegations to Parliament. You remember the Information Act of 2016. It took so long to have regulations being brought into the House, Madam Speaker, because somebody somewhere in the ministry was sleeping. And I'm happy they have been given within 12 months. They must ensure those regulations so that they don't stall our work. Madam Speaker, I would say there, Parliament and Senate and National appear that they don't do their work. Because after we pass the act, somebody goes to court, the regulations are not published. Then when you try and explain to people that the regulatory making authority has not brought us regulations, Madam Speaker, they imagine we are abdicating or relicting our duty, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I agree, the punishable should be around 2 million, Madam Speaker, 2 million Kenya shillings. 500,000 is chicken change, Madam Speaker. So we must at least 2 million minimum because you are punishing a minister. Let's assume the regulatory making authority should be the ministry. If you are now, Madam Speaker, punishing or fining only a minister, Madam Speaker, 500,000 shillings, you can imagine they will just laugh at you. The way we were trying through Senator Outsource's bill, where we are saying when somebody fails to appear before the committee, before committee of parliament, we just find the 500,000. And you find governors who are smiling all the way to the committees. In fact, I remember the former governor Kitui, because Madam Speaker have been veteran in Public Accounts Committee, When we find former Governor Charity Ngilu, 500,000 shillings, she just told us, where can I pay? Can I pay via M-Pesa? Can I pay in cash? Until we guided her that you must deposit and pay through the clerk of the Senate. So we must increase so that we make it painful and punishable going into the future, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the use of technology, that is amendment of section 19 and 18, is to publish both on revocation, because, Madam Speaker, whenever you want to explain something with this digital era, Madam Speaker, we must go online. The website is important. I know Senator Utsosi have always have a problem with people who learn technology issues, even in ICT. Madam Speaker, we have always have a challenge. Let revocation by the concerned clerk, if it is Clerk Nyekenya Jeremiah or the clerk of National Assembly, they should publish on the website through the Kenya Gazette so that any Kenyan, you know, Madam Speaker, I am the chairperson of Open Governance, co-convener in Parliament, Open Governance Program, OGP. One of our tenets of OGP, Open Governance, is transparency and accountability. The only way Parliament will be accountable, colleague leaders, is, Madam Speaker, is by publishing what we do so that it becomes easy to ensure accountable. Madam Speaker, sorry, I had not seen Senator Metu. I thought he was with the President in the tour of Murima. Madam Speaker, and therefore, we must use and ensure that there is revocation and publishing of regulations, Madam Speaker. When you look at section 23, that I agree, because, Madam Speaker, we want to prevent busybodies. Now they says regulations might be considered through the standing orders of the Senate or National Assembly, and as per the act, the parent act of that regulations must be considered. When you look at, Madam Speaker, just to take you back, section 5A, Madam Speaker, of the Statutory Instruments Act of 2013, it talks about explanatory memo. One of the conditions of explanatory memo before you bring before the Senate, before Parliament, Madam Speaker, is that there must be adequate public participation. Colleague leaders and senators, Madam Speaker, most of our bills that we have passed in the floor of the House, and I remember Senator Danson Mungatana was mentioning Okiya Omutata, has only fell at the stroke of the pen by judges of court, Madam Speaker, because of only one simple thing, lack of public participation. In the explanatory memo under section 5A of the Statutory Instruments Act of 2013, one of the grounds, Madam Speaker, is public participation. They must show how consultation was done, and therefore, so that we bulletproof, is it bulletproof, or we ensure that, Madam Speaker, that we cannot open it up for challenge. Madam Speaker, we are not saying courts should not interpret the law or should not question the process of Parliament. And I remember, Madam Speaker, in Speaker Mate's case,